So what is the camera control conundrum? It's something that has had its claws into gaming since the polygon days of Mario 64, to the gritty greys of Grand Theft Auto 4, onwards to the striking glow of the Elden Ring, and to even this very moment you've clicked onto this video, whenever that may be. It's something that has affected all walks of gaming life, from the newcomer, the cracked Fortnite kid, to the dad gamers. As this video goes on, you may realise that it may have even affected you. This little conundrum is something that has been stewing away in my rotten gamer brain for a while now, and it's reared its convoluted little head every time I try and chat about video games with my friends and family, particularly those who are new or intrigued by the medium. Put simply, I believe it boils down to the innate ability a lot of us have to control the camera and the character independently, as opposed to someone unfamiliar with the controller or games needing to do the same thing. It's something so simple, but yet I feel like it has one of the furthest reaching impacts on getting into this hobby. This came up as I was looking at getting into playing multiplayer games with my partner, who is only really beginning her gaming journey now after a lifetime on the sidelines. My first thought was to put her to work helping me out in Monster Hunter or vibing out in Los Santos with me on GTA Online. Maybe we could clear out some crypts in Valheim, and more people to spread managed democracy in Helldivers would never go amiss. You can call me crazy for saying this, but even games like Genshin should, in theory, be a great starting point with its mechanics tilted towards capturing casuals. And hey, a man can dream about an on-demand summon in Elden Ring. Putting aside my selfish attentions though, she's a massive Harry Potter fan, and the best game in recent memory for that world dropped just last year. A dream come true for fans of the books and the movies. But these games all have a bit more of a barrier of entry of varying extents. And so, what better way to start our co-op journey than the game of the year of 2021, It Takes Two? Clearly looks like it was made with couples in mind, and the fact that there isn't a focus on combat should really be appealing as well, right? I'm sure this game will be an easy pick up and play for just about anyone. What could possibly go wrong? You really think I was going for the low hanging fruit there? I think it's safe to say that ground has been well and truly tread at this point by other content creators. Anyone within 5 feet of social media when that game came out is sure to have seen all the compilations of someone's better half flinging themselves off a platform repeatedly, while they wait at the end of the puzzle. All's fair in consoles and combat, but I don't think it would be too far off the mark to assume at least one half of the team would get a bit frustrated with that situation. To be completely transparent, we did actually give one of those games I just mentioned a go, which is what inspired this video originally. Her first playthrough of Hogwarts Legacy was unfortunately halted by a troll attack in Hogsmeade. Yes, that one. Due to the complexity of avoiding attacks and delivering damage at the same time on a DualSense. A further attempt on mouse and keyboard met a similar fate, sadly. Whilst I can tease others new to the medium all I want, that wouldn't be the most productive exercise now, would it? I'm sure we can all remember our first PlayStation platformer and constantly wrestling with the camera as it clipped halfway into the next level. I think part of it comes down to how unwieldy and unintuitive it can be to control a character with the left hand side of your body and move the camera in unison with that on the right hand side. This is something I feel many of us more experienced gamers take for granted, especially those who are familiar with a wider range and style of controllers. Honestly, I personally feel that clunkiness and unfamiliarity whenever I try and mess around with a fighting pad or an arcade machine. Now imagine that with the standard PlayStation or Xbox controller, or even a keyboard and mouse. I'm lucky in that I have a choice on whether or not I want to get bodied and collect L's in Street Fighter with a fighting pad or a controller. But it's not so straightforward for so many other games. Getting used to operating a controller with the dual analogs is one thing, but another concept altogether is managing that camera and character in a 3D space, sometimes with several moving parts. Often, these moving parts tend to be a bit pointy and sharp and have some damage dealing planned for our lucky protagonists. We all know how to use the shadows and environments surrounding our characters to situate ourselves amongst obstacles outside of camera view, but once again, the knowledge of our surroundings are often collected by a flick and a wiggle of the camera stick, before we jump over that pit piled full of pikes and spikes. The finer details about the difference between 2D, 2.5D and 3D worlds may well be a topic for another video, but it's worth giving a bit of spotlight in this one. Whilst both are clearly excellent games, I do think that the approachability of Mario Odyssey is starkly different than that of Super Mario Wonder. One has you jumping and flipping with complex movement tech to capture that collectible, and the other does the same, but takes away the need to manage a camera at the same time. There's a reason that the Switch sells like crazy. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's because a lot of the offerings of the games on that system allow for much better approachability for non-gamers. And this isn't even touching on the immense popularity of mobile gaming for very similar reasons. Some people may well be content with sitting to the side and watching their peers and partners playing, but I truly do believe being able to experience the joy of shared co-op experiences is one of the core things that this industry is about and built from. Some of my fondest memories are nearly always linked to co-op, whether it be overcoming the final boss after a gauntlet of enemies, having that impossible puzzle finally click at the exact same time as the other player, or even just being a menace with the ever so occasional accidental friendly fire. So what actually is the issue? Why is this such a topic of concern? Well, the obvious point to make is, wouldn't you want to share and discuss your experiences in games as you would if it was a movie or a TV show? Checking out the latest episode of a popular TV series has such a small barrier of entry. Shouldn't the same be for games? In my opinion, what this may represent is a wall that must be scaled for those that we wish to enjoy and share our games with. This may well prove to be a mental barrier that certainly does intimidate and potentially scare people off from getting into gaming, or at least exploring games that they may think are interesting. Whilst we do live in a time where full playthroughs of games are uploaded a day within launch, but that never really quite hits the same as overcoming that final boss and rolling credits on your own. But maybe this is all a bit selfish of me, and instead we should be thinking about how all our non-gaming friends and family feel. Something that has seen a bit of a resurgence in recent years, the licensed games from existing beloved IPs, or games that span multiple platforms and media forms. Grand Blue Fantasy is a great example of traditionally mobile gaming in a different format find its way to a console game, and in terms of licensed games, I did touch on Hogwarts Legacy before, but the most popular one at the moment would surely be Spider-Man. What happens if you're a fan of one of these brands and worlds, but feel overwhelmed when you want to try and experience the story in this video game format? To take it that one step further, I think that having people not so consumed within the gaming sphere like we are step into this world can provide an opportunity for all sorts of indie developers to find new and dedicated fans, and genres to see resurgences or emergences. I think having a fresh take from perspectives we don't often get to hear from is such an important thing within this world, and I always welcome a unique stance on an often over-talked topic. Honestly, if it wasn't for Stardew and Animal Crossing having such a low barrier to entry, would we be seeing the cozy game genre as popular as it is today? I think it's pretty clear to all of us that games that have limited need for camera control are more approachable to a lot of newer gamers. Everyone's favourite happy life simulator, Stardew Valley, might just be the best example of this, but there are totally several other examples. Some of these include Spiritfarer, Potioncraft, Terraria, Vampire Survivors, Coral Island, Forager, the list goes on and on. The game doesn't just need to be 2D, it could also be a different approach where the control of the camera is not explicitly needed. Something like Zoo Tycoon, The Sims, City Skylines, or other similar games have pretty good approachability. This may be because the subject matter is something that is easily relatable, but also these games do not have any sense of urgency in controlling the camera, and they don't necessarily require fine-tuning to hit targets. You can just about spend an entire session of The Sims with the same camera angle, and only need to use that scroll wheel to make sure you don't miss the woohoo. I'd also like to quickly take some time to acknowledge that first-person games do exist, and I'm sure thousands of us entered our hardcore gamer years with the gateway game of Skyrim. But applying a first-person perspective to every game just wouldn't be feasible. If you ask someone who casually plays games, but doesn't really consider themselves a hardcore gamer, what kind of things they like to play, and how they like to play them, you may well notice a trend popping up pretty soon. Now, it would be remiss of me to just discuss controlling the camera as the one thing stopping everyone and their gran from enjoying video games. If this was the case, wouldn't it make sense to set up old Betty with Cuphead as their first game? You don't need to control the camera in that one, and it is a 2D perspective game, like I was talking about before. Plus, the visuals are cute and based on a medium that is more approachable, cartoons. What could possibly go wrong with this? Clearly, it's not that simple. Even myself, someone who's been playing games for over 20 years, and cut my teeth on 3D platforms like Spyro, Ratchet and Clank, and Jak and Daxter, gets absolutely cleaned up whenever I try to flex my gamer license on Cuphead. And it's not just Cuphead. There are plenty of games that really should be easily approachable for someone new to the medium at first glance, but instead provide a lot more of a struggle than anticipated. Games require a lot of assumed knowledge. That's always going to be something that I take for granted. Many of us know that hitting the dodge button gives us iframes, or crouching lets us take a stealthy approach, or double pressing the jump button lets our character do a physics-defying double jump. It's in this same mindset that simply controlling the camera may be overwhelming to newer players, and we need to keep in mind that these are also barriers to understanding and enjoying the medium. So do we instead need to consider the fact that potentially the innate ability to control the camera is instead but the first hurdle to enjoying this medium? Or is there something that is better described as one of several potential hurdles? Is this issue only applicable to platformers? There may not be a cut and dry answer, and sitting here deliberating on the exact way to frame this issue may well result in this video being about 6 hours long. And I'll be honest, I'm not that kind of YouTuber. In posing this question, I've tried to magic up some ideas or solutions that may help with this issue. I feel like this video wouldn't be very entertaining if I've just spent the whole time complaining about something I can't fix. The query I have for everyone watching is twofold. Do the games need to change, or does the way that we introduce our loved ones to the games need to change? Rather than sit here and sook, it's worthwhile pointing to examples in the game industry that have cracked the code to a certain extent with managing the camera, whether by taking responsibility away or giving a lot more for the player to mess around with. Games offer plenty of solutions to assist in the mechanics themselves. Some provide lock-on mechanics to help you maneuver your character throughout combat, but with more than one enemy on the screen, that solution suddenly becomes a fair part harder to grapple with. Some other games go with the approach to have the camera automatically follow the point of view and perspective of the character, rather than putting the pressure on the player to handle that. This could be an excellent tool for framing things outside of just cutscenes to draw a player's attention to something. I've seen this in all sorts of games, from first-party AAAs to small indie games and everything in between. Whilst this is a great tool, it does tend to feel like it rips the agency from the hands of the player and becomes a bit hand-holdy. On the other hand, some games do what seems to make the most sense and put the question to the player in the option settings. Sony first-party games, as well as some other newer releases, are a great example of providing a multitude of accessibility options to allow players to fine-tune the experience exactly how they want it. We've also seen several accessible controllers released in the past year or two that, whilst not specifically the topic of this video, would do no harm in helping getting more people into the games they know they will love. But what happens if you're an indie studio that doesn't have the resources to commit to tailoring the camera experience for however many different players? Or any other studio that maybe has a staple and a certain style of gameplay that won't change in fear of uproar from their hardcore fanbase? The responsibility is instead on the players themselves to change and learn and adapt, right? It's a difficult question, one that I wish I knew the answer to. As I've been getting my partner more involved in games, I've taken the approach of starting her off with games that don't require any sort of camera control. Stardew Valley, excellent example of this. But there are other options too, games that don't require rapid movements and quick flicking of the camera. You have recent indie darlings such as The Short Hike or Little Gator Game that remove combat nearly entirely, and in doing so, remove the risk of being a bit slow to navigate a camera around a 3D space. These games don't punish you for learning how to play a game, and I think that's important to keep in mind. Naturally, throughout this video, I hope it's pretty clear to see that it's something that I'm pretty passionate about. I've given it a lot of thought. After all, wouldn't I rather enjoy these games that I love with those close to me, instead of XX Bot Destroyer 6969 XX living in his mother's basement smashing down Mountain Dew and Doritos? I do hope others feel the same. If you're a game developer that has stumbled across this video, I implore you to try and give your game approachable camera controls for all of us to enjoy. I know it's something much easier said than done, and I will always welcome any advancements in this space, any creative solutions, any ideas. I think that games can always evolve further. Games are for all of us. If you've enjoyed this video, please do feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you wish to see me talk about these topics more in the future. I also stream occasionally on Twitch, which you can find in the description and my channel info. Some of the footage shown in this video were from these streams and my own content recordings I've amassed over the past year or so. And lastly, thank you very much for sticking to the end of my first video. My plan is to explore the subject matter of video games and interrogate the systems and concepts that we've been taken for granted. I find the topic of game design fascinating, and it's something that is ripe for exploration as we head into an age where nearly half of Metacritic's top 10 games of 2023 were not your typical AAAs. If you have anything interesting you'd like for me to cover on this channel, or any way that I might be able to improve my content, please feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.